is the Investor Connect podcast program. This is Hall T. Martin. I'm the host of the show, in which we interview angel investors, venture capital, private equity, family offices, and many other investor groups for startups and growth companies. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for joining us. Hello, this is Hall T. Martin with the Investor Connect program. I recently had the opportunity to host the Shaping Funding in MedTech Insights from Industry Insiders webinar by Keiretsu Forum. I had the honor of moderating the discussion. The panelists included Paul Gianneski, Managing Principal and Founder and CEO of Hatch Medical, Dr. Lishan Aklog, Chairman and CEO of Lucid Diagnostic, Todd Wallach, CEO of Solution Medical and serial entrepreneur, and Brianna McDonald, President of Keiretsu Forum Northwestern Rockies. In the first segment, we explored the vision of the life science space. We looked at the guests' inspiration behind focusing on life science and medical device technologies. They detailed their approach to project leadership, industry expertise, and resource allocation for bringing novel products to the market. We also discussed trends and highlights from the McKinsey report. I hope you enjoy this episode. Well, I thank everybody for joining us today for this fireside chat on MedTech and the broader life science investment landscape. This has been inspired by the McKinsey report on the life science industry. My name is Hall Martin. I'm the CEO of 10 Capital and the Vice President of Keiretsu Texas, moderating the panel today. And let me introduce our panelists who are with us today. First, we have Paul Gianneski, Managing Principal and Founder of Hatch Medical. Paul has spent the last 30 years as an executive in the healthcare industry. Paul is a past president and current board member of the Southeast Life Sciences Association, an angel investor and diligence team leader with the Keiretsu Forum, mentor to Georgia Tech's Venture Lab program, and an external review committee member of the Georgia Research Alliance. Paul is also acting chairman of Trace Orthopedics, an early stage company focused on tendon repair, and a past board member of Mermaid Medical, privately held Danish medical device company. Paul, thank you for joining us. Next, we have with us Dr. Lishan Aklog, chairman and CEO of PavMed and Lucid Diagnostics. Dr. Aklog was a cardiothoracic surgeon with a strong interest in technological innovation in medicine. He has an extensive background in academic cardiac surgery and was actively involved in medical device innovation. Transitioning from a successful career in cardiac surgery, Dr. Aklog co-founded Lucid Diagnostics and PavMed. He ventured into medical device entrepreneurship, focusing on developing and commercializing innovative technologies. He was instrumental in creating and selling medical devices, notably a device for non-surgically removing clots. Dr. Aklog, thank you for joining us.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Next, we have Todd Wallach, CEO of Solutions Medical and serial entrepreneur. Todd currently serves as the CEO at Solution Medical. He's a successful serial entrepreneur, management consultant, board member, investor, advisor, and seasoned senior executive in biotechnology, pharmaceuticals, devices, and diagnostics. He has started and built innovative companies with market capitalization of greater than $2 billion, raised over $90 million in capital, including $8 million in grant funding, and has multiple exits with a strong return. Todd has taken drugs from the earliest signal in a lab to multiple drugs on the market globally. He's also an entrepreneur resident at Delaware Innovation Space and associate editor of the Journal of Translational Medicine. Todd, thank you for joining us.
Great, thanks. My honor to be here today.
Great. Finally, we have Brianna McDonald, President, Keiretsu Forum Northwest and Rockies. Brianna has been an active leader and angel investor with Keiretsu Forum since its launch in Seattle in 2005, supporting its growth to become the largest and most active group globally. She has proven specifically adept at screening companies for angel investment, coaching companies on presentation and investor relations, sales strategy execution, relationship management, and leading due diligence teams. Brianna has established a reputation for achievement in all phases of the Keiretsu process: risk management, market anticipation and response, regional and national business development, organizational development, angel investing, and overall enterprise management. Brianna, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So for those who are participating today, if you would like to enter your questions in the chat box, we will cover them at the end of the program. We do not get to all of them within this tiny 90-minute slot. We will compile their answers post-production and share it with you via email. So with that, let's go ahead and kick off into our first segment. Let's talk about the vision or the outlook on life science and med device space. So let's go through and have each person tell us a little bit more about what are you finding in the marketplace today, and how does that impact what you're seeing with your work in the life science med device? Brianna, would you want to kick us off?
All right, I would be happy to kick it off. There's a lot of different things happening in this space, and it's going to continue to grow, especially as we look at the challenges we have in our healthcare industry as a whole, how we continue to improve the medicine we're delivering, and couple that with the labor challenges that we're also seeing. I had the opportunity to attend Plug and Play biannual summit 2 weeks ago in Silicon Valley. And really, the only thing that was discussed there across all a variety of sectors was AI and how AI also plays into this. So, looking at medical devices, how they work, and then how they integrate into the systems and the workflows of the providers is going to be critical. And then looking at those insurance payouts. So, I think that fundamentally some things will be staying the same. You've got to look at how the patients really are going to be able to improve what's happening with them, but also the providers that are delivering it, how it's going to improve them and be able to easily and seamlessly fit into those workflows and get that sales cycle shortened, which is continually long, and how those payers are going to continue to pay for them and getting the proper CPT codes and filings to be able to help to cover those costs.
Well, thank you. And Todd, can you give us your take on the life science medical device space right now? What do you see going on?
Absolutely. And Brianna was perfect. That was a perfect response for Brianna. But today I'm working at the intersection of therapeutics and devices on drug delivery and the ability for patients to now be empowered to self-deliver. And what we're seeing is a dramatic shift in the marketplace for patient empowerment, but even more important, fitting into the patient lifestyle, not the drug fitting in, not the patient fitting into the drug's lifestyle that it imposes. So what you see is a very dramatic change in the shift of what patients want to see, what patient advocacy groups want to see, and how clinicians treat their patients. They want to know that these patients are being treated in between office visits. They want to know that these patients are complying. They want to know that, one, is the patient involved in their care? Because they're more and more wanting to do it through AI, through Google searches, and et cetera. And this change that we're seeing over the last couple of years, and one of the side effects where I look at, for lack of a better term, for the GLP-1s is that patient self-administration of injectables is now in the norm. It's more and more out there. And what you're seeing now is now you're seeing the impacts of what the GLP does on patients' lifestyles and how we can improve still the drug delivery and the unmet needs of patients administering themselves.
Thank you. And next up, Dr. Akblog, what's your take on this topic?
Sure. Boy, there's a lot to talk about. We could dive into so many. So let me just touch on a few things, some of which echo Brianna and Todd's comments, as well as the McKinsey report. I think on the innovation side, it's remarkable what's going on, whether it's, the intersection between drug delivery and drugs, whether it's AI, machine learning. What's interesting is that MedTech is not new to the game when it comes to AI and machine learning. It's something that's been around much longer than it's been in other areas, and we're well positioned for that. And I think something that Todd also hinted at, which is that we're well poised in MedTech to take advantage of the transformation in healthcare and in healthcare delivery. I mean, obviously it goes hand in hand. And some of the themes around the way we're delivering healthcare we've done it historically is going to look arcane 10 or 15 years from now. The idea that you go see your physician or you go to a clinic and then the patient is just out in the ether for some period of time and they only kind of reemerge when bad things happen or at the next appointment, that's going to seem incredibly arcane. And the idea that we can use digital tools and other modalities to have essentially continuous healthcare is something that I think will play into AI and there's a lot of robustness there. I think that's the good news. I think from a small company innovator point of view, I think there are headwinds. The headwinds is an access to capital. I think the markets tend to be finicky. The parent company, PAVmed, has been in the public markets, and when it's great, it's great. There's access to lots of capital. When it dries up, it dries up. And so there's a lot of the market right now. I would say, again, I think this echoes some of the points in the McKinsey report, is focused on being less speculative, less willing to make bets on early, even ideas that look really innovative and really attractive, and more focused on just sort of metrics of profitability and cash flow and things like that. And so those of us who are in the earlier stages and working on innovation just have to understand that. I think, as we've heard Howard talk about, the angel community has a big opportunity, a big role to play. there's a sort of this interesting flip that's going on where VCs are moving to be sort of less venture oriented and maybe more, sort of later stage, and private equity is perhaps crossing its path. There's all these strange dynamics that are kind of the standard breakdown of angel, VC, private equity, public, all of that is being jumbled, I think, and we'll see how it all plays out. But it provides a challenge. And then the final thing I would say, I'm also on the board of AdvaMed, the MedTech Association. So I get a bit of perspective on what's happening on the regulatory side and on reimbursement. Reimbursement is going to continue to be a challenge. Technologies such as Lucid, which is a electrodiagnostic, is always going to be a higher hurdle to make sure that these technologies get paid for. That's a work in progress. The FDA side is better than it's been, but on the payment side, it's a problem. And then the other big thing that's come up, and it's a really central topic in the advocacy side, is China. China has absolutely made its mind to become a leader in MedTech, and MedTech was sort of off. The supply chain has been affected by China, but there aren't, and they participate in other parts of the world. But in terms of being active in the U.S., that hasn't been an issue. That's about to change. They're coming after acquiring a large percent, a meaningful and increasing percentage of 510(k) applications are coming from Chinese companies. They're acquiring small U.S. companies. There's all sorts of stuff going on, and we're on their in the crosshairs there. And I think the big companies used to have to worry about that because they were in China. I think small, earlier stage innovative companies have to keep that in mind. It's not just something that hasn't been on our radar. So those are three areas just to get the conversation.
Great, thank you. And Paul, what's your take on this? What do you see out there?
Thanks very much. It's great to be here. So, obviously, the other panelists touched on some really important topics, AI and its integration in the MedTech space. We do a lot in the imaging space, working with interventional radiology and interventional cardiologists. And we see, the cross section where AI is used to identify health issues that otherwise might be unnoticed for some period of time, such as potential for stroke or aneurysms, things of that nature. So, I think there's some real opportunities there. And Lishan touched on a couple of important topics, I believe. One, of course, is the reimbursement space. I mean, we've got, not only do we have to come up with better solutions, but they have to be, the economics need to be there. Otherwise, we don't see reimbursement. We don't see adoption. That's critical. I'll mention two other things that, as a little company, we focus on early stage technologies. We like single-use 510(k) devices because we can self-fund those. But there's some issues that I think are impacting small device companies across the board. We're seeing some real issues with manufacturing and supply chain. We have, through some of our partnerships, we have devices that are already in the marketplace, and where the lead times for certain pieces of the device were maybe 6 weeks out. We just heard back 31-week lead time. And a lot of it has to do with the device industry also works with these OEMs that produce for other industries, where instead of, we think 10,000 or 100,000 units of something is a lot, they're talking millions. And so as a little company, to get into the queue, we're pushed to the back because we only need 5 or 10,000 units of a particular spring or catheter or tubing material, whatever it might be. It's a real issue. And I think the other thing I would touch on is what's happened in Europe with regard to CE mark and MDR. We used to be able to go to Europe first because that was an easier path, and that's changed. We used to be able to go there, get some revenue, and build our clinical story, and then come back to the US. And that's no longer the case. And I know we're partnered with Lishan's company on Port.io, which is a new technology for intraosseous access. And maybe in the past, that might have been a route to take. It's not. And so we got to go through FDA, and that, the clinical piece of it becomes more arduous. And so you need more investment dollars. There's just a longer path. And it's it impacts everything. And so all these things are sort of interrelated here. And anyway, just some things to think about and kick the topic off.
Great. Right. Thank you, Paul. Let's talk about the McKinsey report and the trends and highlights that came out of it. We've already touched on it a little bit already, but for those who don't know, McKinsey recently came out with a report that talked about things like stabilizing growth, focus on profitability, surging innovation. There's different variances in the geographies in there, and there's also a lot of M&A activity. Let's start off with Todd, and can you tell us more about how those trends match or don't match what you see out there?
They match very well with what I've been doing. When I joined Solution couple of years back, some of what Paul touched on, the two areas of focus I were on was focusing on the supply chain and the economics and the reimbursement. And as a small company, the ability to, one, secure a supply chain is near impossible. And what's interesting about the supply chain is they're as selective as VCs and investors are with picking who they invest in to move forward. So we really have two due diligences. The supply chain due diligence is, are they going to make enough money? Do they have enough units? Do they have a future? Do they have a potential? How many pieces do you need to the supply chain to build? So that was the first area of focus, especially in MedTech. In drug, it's a little bit different, but now in MedTech, when you're bringing in delivery device, for example, you have all the MedTech aspects of it, and you have all the drug aspects of it. So you're now making a combination product that has the inherent issues and regulatory of both the US and Europe embedded in. And which process do you go down to? So securing the supply chain first to enable your products is critical. Then the other part is can you make money? Even before we finalized the design, we finalized what the drug will look like, we finalized the regulatory path. It was, will someone buy it? Will someone pay for it? Will someone reimburse it? Will someone distribute it? And will someone write ultimately the script for either the device or the drug? And going into stepping into that today, and a lot of companies, many 20 years back, say 15 years back, that didn't focus on both those aspects, and then blending that in with patient journey and the workflows are where the McKinsey report is sort of being on the periphery of. These are the discrete steps that you have to act on. And that supply chain, I can't emphasize how important it is. In the they became very selective in the COVID world. The post-COVID world, they're even more selective, and they're still ramping up. So locking down your supply, locking down your quality, locking down your timelines are critical for small companies, for investors, as well as for patients.
Right. And Paul, can you talk more about your view of the McKinsey report, how it matches or contrasts and compares with your experience?
Yeah, and just to touch on a little bit of what Todd mentioned about supply chain. And I was having a conversation recently with a business partner of ours who's an OEM manufacturer. And there are some of his colleagues who are now looking at their customer base and they're firing their bottom 20%. If you're not generating enough volume, they're telling you to go elsewhere. And so, as Todd said, you're going through due diligence, obviously for funding, but you have to go through due diligence with prospective manufacturer. And that's frightening as a startup and a small company, because you used to just, hey, if I can just get the money, I know I can build it. And that's becoming more of a challenge. The other thing I'll touch on was just on the M&A side, because they talked a little bit in the McKinsey report about deal volumes and things of that nature. And, you still see the big companies are, acquisitive, they're looking for big deals, right? So Hatch Medical, we broker a lot of transactions. We do a lot of out licensing for clients. We help set up distribution. We do, non-strategic asset sales, things of that nature. And what I would say is there is an appetite as you get further down the food chain. So, the mid-size and the smaller companies, they want access to, similar technologies that the big companies are snapping up, but they know they don't have the same checkbook, right? So what we've found is that there are opportunities at the lower end of the food chain, if you will, to get out licensing deals done where you're shifting some of that risk over to the strategic, if you will, where they're willing to invest some resources, maybe regulatory expertise, maybe production help. And in turn, right, you find a partnership early on. It may not be the same deal structure. It's not going to be the same amount of upfront money, things of that nature, but it can be a very lucrative transaction on the back end if your technology delivers in the marketplace. And so that's a little bit different than, McKinsey's M&A looking at these big, the Boston Scientifics and the J&Js and the Medtronics of the world. But there are a lot of deals still happening as you get down the food chain. And I would say, as an entrepreneur, don't close your eyes to those types of deals. They can also be lucrative and beneficial for investors.
Great. And Brianna, what's your take on this topic?
Well, looking at McKinsey as a whole, a lot of what they specialize in is the big companies and what the big companies are trending in. And I had the opportunity to learn from a partner at McKinsey at Wharton a couple of months ago. And there was a bit of a disconnect that I found between what is actually happening in the early stage space and what happens in the later stage. What I would like to just bring together with what Todd said and what Paul said and what I've been beating the drum on for about a year now, and will continue to beat this drum loudly, is that we just need to get back to basics. We've had basically 14 years of free money, things moving fast, lack of planning, and you need to plan more appropriately and be able to get in the non-dilutive funding sources to help you. There are a multitude of ways to do that, whether you're a scrappy CEO and can go to business plan competitions and get the support and get the advisors and build up the network, or figuring out who those investors are that have those proper expertise to help you at the certain stages, to then build out the proper plan to identify the bomb, identify the supply chain and what actually goes into it and how you do the build of materials to be able to get that product to market while doing the market research and getting the proper KOLs in to be able to sell it. So I think as aspiring entrepreneurs or as investors ourselves, we need to be able to look back at what is the planning that has actually been done and what are the holes that are there and how can we help and support to be able to bring this to fruition. Because like what Paul was saying, the strategics are big. And especially for us as early stage investors and how we work and operate, those are our friends later on down the road. And it's all about planting seeds along the way. How can these entrepreneurs that are developing these new technologies actually build relationships with these people over time, nurture the seed, help it grow? So when the time is right, those strategics come in because they'll be friendlier to us also in the investment as they come in, help support and take it into market. And that's what we've seen time and time again with some of the medical device companies that we've invested in that have done really well, that actually haven't gone the venture route for big dollars later on. So I can't stress the importance of, there are no shortcuts. There just are no shortcuts. And for a period of time, we were able to have shortcuts where the money was free and we could just do different things and we could just be scrappy and throw things together. And that's not the state of where we're at right now. And investor sentiments across the board are pulling back. And that's where we actually have the greatest opportunity to lean in, because this is the time when the innovation and that intersection of that really makes a difference. And we can look back at the industry cycles and see that again and again.
Great. Those are some great points. And Dr. Aklog, you've already touched on this topic, but maybe you can fill out more details for us there.
Sure. I guess I'd echo, I've got a mostly jaded perspective on management consulting and the report. I mean, from our perspective, from our part of the ecosystem, and I think as Brianna said, they're generally focused on macroeconomic issues and on what happens with the large companies. Not that doesn't matter, because it's obviously important to understand what's happening with the strategics. What are they looking at? Are they, what's their appetite for risk and all that? And it clearly states, I think, what we see, which is that they're willing to ride it out. They're willing to wait and pay more later for technologies that are further de-risked. So I think all of that is fine, but there's just a lot missing with regard to things that are relevant to earlier stage entrepreneurial companies. And it all still comes down at the end of the day to, capital, access to capital. Where is it? How do you access it? And how do you, put yourself in a position to do so? I think I would, again, as someone who has run a public company, I think I would characterize, I forgot your term, Brianna, but something along the line of money was, there was access to fairly easy capital. And that is not this, that's not where things are these days. And I also think the way you translate the analysis around what's going on with the strategics and their M&A activity, what that means to smaller companies is that and earlier stage companies, is that they have to have a pathway to commercialization that has some legs to it, so that you can actually, not on the same scale, but you can continue to demonstrate the commercial potential of your technology once you get it cleared and you're out there. And you're not just sitting there sort of twiddling your thumbs and saying, who wants this, and hoping that, you'll be one of 50 that where it actually ends up in some kind of a bidding war, because that just doesn't happen very often. And so understanding what is what are viable pathways to early commercialization, getting that plan in place well ahead of time, knowing how to execute on that, having the right people in place, having the proper relations with the physician, the user community, whoever that may be, whatever particular specialties. All of that are increasingly important, because I think we're going to have more companies are going to have self-commercialize for longer periods of time than perhaps was the case in the past.
Great. Investor Connect helps investors interested in startup funding. In this podcast series, experienced investors share their experience and advice. You can learn more at investorconnect.org. Paul T. Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions.